Good evening, Year 10 students and Year 10 parents, and thank you very much for joining us remotely for our Year 10 work experience information evening. I hope you can hear me well. The meeting's being recorded, so if at any time you need to leave us or if you need to double check some details later, we will make the recording available to you by the end of the week. So at the Willing School, we're very keen to offer work experience to our Year 10 students in July. And we know from surveys, from discussion with students, with parents, with employers, that it is a very, very valuable experience. And to make sure that students get the most of it, it's important that we take you through the way it's organized and what we expect from students and from parents. So I'm therefore joined tonight by Claire Desai, who you probably know is our career leader at the Willing School, and by Kate Barrow and Julia Hallam from the EBP, the Education Business Partnership. So Julia and Kate have been organizing work experience for the Willing School for a good number of years now and are very experienced, and they will share with you all the information that you need to know. So I'll now hand over to Julia.
Okay, good evening everybody. Hopefully you can hear and see me okay. As Mr. Collins just said, my name is Julia and I am part of the work experience team at the Education Business Partnership. And this evening, Kate and I are just going to get you to start thinking about work experience, what it means and the actual processes that we need to go through in order to get your placements. Now, as you can see from that first slide that's on the screen, you are all due to do your work experience the week of the 4th of July. Now, I know we're only sat here on the 12th of January and you're probably thinking, goodness me, you know, that's months away. It is, but there is a lot of work that needs to be done in order to secure these placements. So that's why we're starting this early in the year. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so those of you who don't know us, the Education Business Partnership, or EBP for short, we are an education charity and we've been established now for over 25 years. In fact, I think we're probably coming up to our 30th anniversary very soon. We've got a big active network of businesses, and although we are based in Newbury, we do cover quite a few areas across the Thames Valley. So we go into West Berkshire, Reading, and we have just started working with a school in Oxfordshire as well. And each year there are, a lot of students that are involved, not just in work experience, but work related activities as well. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so what do we do? So we don't just do work experience. We've got a whole team at the EBP that is dedicated to delivering different events, both in schools and over the last couple of years virtually. So that is things such as spotlights on careers, help with CV workshops, interview prep, that sort of thing. But together, excuse me, both departments are, our main objective is obviously to inspire you, the students, because you are, the future workforce of the country. But this evening, like we've said, we are going to be focusing on just on work experience. Okay, next slide, please. So some of you also might be sat there thinking, oh gosh, why have I got to have a week out of school and, why go and do work experience? Now, I've been doing this job for a very long time, and yes, obviously there is so much that you can learn, in school academically, but I do firmly believe that there's quite a lot of things that you perhaps need to develop a little bit more, and the best way of doing that is by getting out of the familiarity of being in school, the familiarity of being around the teachers that you've known for, sort of 3 or 4 years, and away from your friends. And by doing that sort of thing, it will help you to develop independence, responsibility, and become a bit more confident. Okay, so that all comes under third line down there is employability skills or transferable skills or soft skills. Okay, so like I say, these are things that along with actual practical skills that you'll probably learn and pick up in your placement. Employability skills are one of the biggest things that you will develop. Now, you are in year 10, so please don't sit there getting worried if you don't know what you want to do in the future, because actually your work experience placement isn't about your future career necessarily. It's more about, like I say, just getting out into that world of work, maybe just sort of seeing an environment that you've often thought, I wonder what happens behind the scenes in a particular employment area. So like I say, please don't worry if you don't know what you want to do in the future yet. Okay, one of the things that we do, and Kate will go over it in more detail, is we actually go out and visit and speak to all the employers that take students. And I have to say, actually, it's really interesting, even going into places like supermarkets, you'd be amazed at what it takes to actually get your food and the different products, out onto the shop floor and to the customers. So, like I said, if there's something that you're interested in, then do, give that a thought, something to do for your work experience. You will, like I said, discover new skills that you've got, practical as well as those soft skills. And work experience is a really valuable thing to be able to put onto a personal statement or job application form or college or sixth form application. Employers really do put a lot of value if you have had the opportunity to go out on work experience. Okay. It will also make you realise that actually what you're learning at school does transfer into, adult life and working life. So many jobs you're going to need math skills, writing skills. So yeah, like I say, it will open your eyes and make you realise that what you're sat doing at school is transferable into the workplace. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so there's two main ways that you can get your work experience, okay, and we've wholeheartedly recommend that first option, and that is for you to get your own placement. Okay, now this is if you've got a contact, or if your parents or friends or a relative has got a contact in a company that you actually think that you would be interested in doing your placement at. Okay, and the second option is if you don't have any of those sort of contacts, then we can try and find a placement for you. And in fact, some sort of vocational areas, particularly for some reason veterinary surgeries, they do actually like students to apply direct to them, because they like it when you're really interested and you approach them direct. So please do, like I said, if there is something you're interested in, then do try and do it via an own placement. Bear in mind that there are some restrictions on various placements because of your ages. So for example, if any of you are already thinking of maybe getting into any of the civilian forces or medicine, none of the civilian forces will take you, so you can't go to the police force or paramedics or the fire brigade. Again, unless you've maybe got a contact that might be able to take you in some kind of an admin role within those environments. And medicine, again, is really, really difficult for us to try and get placements for you, particularly at the moment in the pandemic. But what we can do is try and find placements that sort of relate to medicine. So you could maybe think of going into a school that has got a special educational needs unit, or in fact a special needs school. We're hoping that care homes and day centres, they by the summer might be a bit more open to having students. At the moment they'll only take students who are double vaccinated though. So again, like I say, just bear that in mind if those are the sorts of things that you are thinking of doing in the future. Okay, next slide please. Okay, so like I've already said, have a think about the sorts of things that you're interested in. Okay, if there's any particular jobs and sectors that you do wonder about what goes on behind the scenes, have you actually got any interests that we could relate your work experience to? If you're an avid reader, we could maybe try and get you a job in a placement in a bookshop or a library. If you're quite outward going and you're a very people person, then we could try and maybe get you something in hospitality, so in a hotel or a cafe. If you like looking after younger children, then again, a school or childcare environment like a nursery or preschool, that is something that we could think about as well. And not only sort of think about what you would like to do, but also think about what you really wouldn't want to do. Okay, so don't just, I'll go through the form in a minute, but don't just put down things on the form for the sake of it. Have a real good think, and if there are things that you're really not interested, then obviously try and avoid those. Another thing that you need to think about for either way, if you're getting an own placement or you want us to place you, is where you can get to. Okay, it is really, really important to have a good chat with your parents, with your guardians, and make sure that you don't put down on the form an area that you then can't get to. Okay, because you are going to have to get there for the week. Okay, next slide, please. So just a little bit more information about getting an own placement. There is a separate form that you need to complete. Okay, and like we've already said, if you've got a family member or friend or a contact already that you can approach for getting an own placement, then that's a really good thing to do. Have a think about where they're located. You don't have to have an own placement within Berkshire or the Reading area. You can go pretty much anywhere in the country. Actually, we have own placements that come through for Cornwall. We've even had one in Scotland one year. But just bear in mind that if you are going outside of Berkshire and Oxfordshire, then there could well be an additional charge for the pre-placement check to be carried out by the agency that is close to where you're going. Okay, and how we work that with the Willink is if your placement is outside of Berkshire and Oxfordshire, then Mr. Sy will let me know where you're thinking of going, and we will find out how much that extra cost is going to be before you submit your own placement, and then you pay school for that to be done. Okay, so do bear that in mind, and the charges do vary. Actually, they can come through as high as sort of, I don't know, sort of £80–90. Some of them are only around the £20 mark though, so it really does vary. Okay. Another thing to think about if you're getting an own placement is that any employer that takes a student must have what's called full employer liability insurance cover. Okay, so right now, right at the very beginning, if you are thinking of getting an own placement, please do check with the company that you're asking that they have got that cover. Now, this is particularly important if you're thinking of maybe getting a placement with somebody in the trades. So if you want to, if you've got a family friend or something like that that is a plumber or a carpenter, that's absolutely fine. There's no reason why you can't do the placement, but please do make sure they've got that cover, because if not, then we can't actually sanction the placement for you. It doesn't necessarily mean that they won't be able to take you, because there may be the option that they can extend that insurance. So if they've only got public liability, have a chat with them and see if they would be prepared to extend it to that employer liability insurance. Okay, but that is really important that they have that cover, because if you were to have an accident or maybe break some equipment or something like that during your placement, then you won't be covered. Okay, so once you have got your own placement, what you need to do is get the form, and you will all be receiving a pack from school that's going to have all these forms in them. So you will need to give the own placement form to the employer that has said they'll take you, and they'll complete all the details on there. You need to sign it, the employer will sign it, and parents and guardians, you need to sign that form as well. It will come back into school, and then we'll pick that up and then do the appropriate pre-placement checks for you. Now, if you are doing an own placement, we will also ask you to complete one of the standard application forms. Okay, and the reason we ask you to do that is that very occasionally own placements are pulled before the placement starts. If for some reason maybe the employer finds that they're not going to have the staff on site that they thought they would in order to supervise you, particularly over the last sort of year, then placements are pulled. So if we've got that other standard application form, then we can just start trying to place you in something else straight away, rather than having to contact school, get them to fill your form in, get it back to us. It all sort of adds to the time. So if you're doing an own placement, you need the own placement form that goes off to the employer, comes back, comes to us, but also submit a general application form. Okay, so next slide then, please. Okay, so if we are going to do the placement for you, the standard application form, so this is the one that all of you need to complete. You can see the example, it's not very big on the screen, sorry, but you will all get one of those. Now, I'm not going to spend ages going through the whole form, but one of the most important sections on there is that large section at the bottom of the front page, where it's got the locations that sort of in your school area that we can try and get placements for you. Okay, now, like I've already said, please have a really good think about different areas that you can get to. Part of work experience, like I say, is to help improve your independence. Maybe if you walk to school or you get a lift to school, would you be able to jump on a bus for a week and get yourself down into Reading Town Centre? Or would you be happy to catch the train over to Newbury? That sort of thing, all right? So make sure there's a good conversation goes on between you and your parents. And like I say, as many places that you can get to really helps, because it opens up the opportunities that we can try and get for you. So we're not trying to place the whole school in Mortimer, which just isn't going to work. So, excuse me, sorry. Another important box on there is a medical information box. Now, the reason we ask you to complete that is so that we can make sure we place you appropriately. Excuse me, 2 minutes. Sorry, my voice is going to go. I'm just going to have a quick sip of water. Thank you. Sorry, I feel myself starting to cough. So, medical information. Okay, we need that so that we can let employers know if you've got any, particular medical conditions that we need to let them know, and you will also need to let them know as well, and so that we can place you appropriately and not somewhere that's going to affect that medical condition. Now, on the second page, you will find 3 boxes that are choice 1, 2 and 3. They're not in in any particular order, but they are 3 general sectors that we would like you to try and think about that you would be interested in doing your placement in. Okay, now what we don't want to see on there is specific company names. So we don't want to see something like I don't know, Sainsbury's, the name of a garage and the name of a school. What we would like to see is retail, garage and education or primary school. So don't put specific company names, okay? Because again, that does kind of restrict you, because then if those companies don't take, we've then got to come back to school and just say, look, will you be interested in general retail, for example? However, if there is a certain area of retail that you're interested in, then do please, put that information on there. Like I've already said, if you're interested in, maybe go to a bookshop, something like that, or a bike shop. So put your choices on there, and then there's also some space there for you just to write the reasons why you would like to go there for the placement. Okay. Be realistic when you're filling that form in, okay? I can assure you that one of the things that we tend to get quite regularly, particularly over here in West Berkshire, for some reason, students put that they can walk into Newbury, and then one of the choices is a zoo. Now, you know, if somebody could build a zoo in Newbury, it would make our jobs a whole lot easier. But obviously, again, unfortunately, that completely restricts your choices. Okay, so be realistic about the types of employers that there are in the areas that you can get to. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, as with the own placement form, that parental form requires signatures on there. Okay, now that signature is vitally important because that is what says to us and to school that you as a parent or guardian agree to what your son or daughter have put on your application form. Okay, if a form is submitted to school without the signature on it, then I'm really sorry, but it will come back to you because we must have that signature. Okay, you'll also be given a guide to work experience. So while you're filling your form, there's a guide that will come out for you to, you know, to give you some help while you're filling the form in as well. Now, as soon as you get your forms completed, then please get them back to school. If for some reason you don't have your own placement form back from the employer, then please can you make a note on your general application form just to say that you are still waiting for your own placement form, and then we can, you know, I'll keep in contact with Mr. Sy and we can chase you for that. Okay, and then that way we won't find you another placement until we know for definite whether your own placement is being confirmed or not. But we would like you please to try and get all your application forms into school week commencing the 31st of January. Okay, it's not a difficult form to fill in, so it shouldn't take you more than a few days. You know, this weekend you can all start and think about it and maybe get your own placement forms off. But yeah, if you could try and get them in by the 31st of January, please. Once we've got the forms in, we'll have a good look through, and it may well be that we will need to just come and have a chat with you. We'll probably do it via Teams, or, you know, if situation allows, come into school and meet you and just have a chat with you individually. Okay, and that tends to be with students that maybe have got quite restricted travel or quite restricted choices as well. We'll just come and have a chat with you and see if that we can get some more information from you. And with both types of placements, as we've already said, we will then undertake pre-placement checks for you. That's for both the own placements again and the ones that we source. Okay, next slide then, please. Okay, so I'm now going to hand you over to Kate, who is going to take you through the rest of the presentation.
Hello everyone. So thank you, Julia, for that. That was really informative. Just now to say, please bear in mind, I mean, I don't want to be the first person to say it, but to mention the big C word, COVID-19 pandemic. These are obviously different times that we're working in now. We found that we are, you know, there are restrictions on the type of work experience placements that we can find. I mean, I know Julia's already mentioned the situation with the care homes and the requirement to have the double vaccination before you're able to work there. But we are also finding that there are certain sectors where it's not impossible to find a placement by any means, but there are less opportunities. So, for example, if you wanted to work somewhere based in an office, something like IT maybe, something like HR or law, it is more difficult for us to find those placements at the moment because, as you're aware, a lot of people are still working from home, so there are just less offices that are able to take students in. I mean, again, this might be where an own placement might be the route to go, because often if it's somebody that you know personally, you know, a mum or dad at home, it might be that you could get the experience working with them still at home, just you couldn't go into the actual office. So I think still explore the own placement options. but just be aware there will, be certain sectors that it is more difficult. So all I would say is give some different options on your form. So maybe if you do have office as an option, also as maybe your second or third choice, maybe give us some other options that you might also be interested in, things maybe like retail or hospitality or something where it might be, slightly easier to find placements. Please also just be aware that obviously, nobody has a crystal ball at the moment. I mean, things at the moment still seem to be going ahead as we would expect. All the employers we're speaking to are still really keen to help wherever they can and take students. But please just be aware, obviously, we are at the mercy of any changes that may be brought in by the government. So we will obviously have to follow any guidance that comes out nearer the time, and also just be aware that the placement may have to be cancelled by the parties in the case of a COVID outbreak. So we will give you guidance in terms of what you need to do if either you or the employer have COVID in terms of communication. Next slide, please. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the pre-placement checks that we do. So for all the EBP source placements and the own placements, we carry out a pre-placement check. So this is basically one of us will contact the employer or visit the employer, and we check that the setting is appropriate and safe for you to visit, first of all. So we make sure, for example, they've got all their sort of health and safety documentation up to date, that they have all the relevant insurances. Julia mentioned earlier about the employer's liability insurance, which all employers must have before they can take a student. We will also be in checking the employer's risk assessments as well. So the purpose of this check really is just so you can be really secure and really confident that the place that you or your son or daughter is going is a safe environment and it has been checked out. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of sort of more logistical side of things now, so before you go out on placement, all students will get issued with a placement description. So this will be just a short summary of the types of things you'll be doing in the job, a little bit of a sort of job description. You'll also get all the information you need. So you will have things like what time you need to arrive there in the morning, what time you need to work until, what your lunch break arrangements are, all of that sort of information. They'll tell you what you need to wear, if there's any special guidance in terms of, closed-toe shoes, for example, or no jewellery or anything like that, any restrictions on dress. That will be given to you there, and you'll be also given the name of your supervisor who you need to ask for when you report in on the first day. So just be aware as well, this obviously is work experience, not school, so you will be in a workplace. So the placement hours, they'll vary depending on the employer, but they're very unlikely to be the same as school hours unless potentially you are working in a school, but it will be a maximum of 8 hours a day, because that is a maximum that you're allowed to work on the work experience placement. But within that, it could, it might be a slightly earlier start than normal. It might be 9 to 5. It might be something slightly outside of that, but that will be communicated to you well in advance. So as soon as you get all those placement details through, so they'll come through the school, what we then ask you to do is all students must make contact with their employer before they go to their placement. So we recommend that you do that in the first instance sort of by a phone call. It may be then that the employer is happy to just have a chat with you on the phone. It may be that they want to see you in person, so they might at that stage sort of arrange for you to come in for a little bit of a sort of small interview or an initial sort of casual meeting. So it really will depend on the employer what they request. But yes, all students must make contact before they go in. Next slide, please. Okay, so during the placement itself, and so this is now you're going out on the placement, things to think about. So I think first of all, try and be realistic in terms of the expectation of the types of things you're going to be asked to do. I mean, obviously you'll have had your job description through already on the paperwork, so that will help, have a bit of a guide as to what you're going to be doing. But I think just be realistic, you know, it is work experience. You are really only there for 1 week. So for example, you know, if you're going to go and work in a hairdresser or something like that, you're likely to be doing things like maybe answering the phone, greeting customers, making cups of tea, sweeping up hair. You're not going to be going in giving haircuts, as you can imagine, for obvious reasons. So just, you know, be realistic going in there and, you know, go in with a really positive attitude that it's a really good learning experience to sort of soak up the environment and, you know, do the jobs you're given and also see what else is going on in that business, what other people are doing in their jobs as well. So you may have a workbook to complete, a logbook. So I'd recommend with one of those that you try and complete it on a fairly regular basis throughout your placement, rather than necessarily leaving it all till the last day, because it's sometimes quite hard to remember, you know, by day 5 what you did at the beginning of day 1. So I'd recommend, you know, each day to maybe just have a little bit of a look at it and a quick reflection of what you've done that day, so that when you come to the end of the placement, you've got a really good sort of list of what you've been doing. A member of staff from the school will either come in and visit, or they'll make a phone call at some point during the week when you're out on placement. So that's basically just an opportunity for them to have a bit of a catch up with you, make sure everything's going okay, have a chat with the employer, and, you know, if there's any issues or anything at that stage, you can obviously speak to a member of staff then. Or equally, you know, often we get really good reports back, you know, from employers midweek sort of saying, yeah, students getting on really well, you know, it's all going really great. But it's nice to just have that sort of touch point. We're here as well, so if at any point you need any support from EBP, we're here constantly while you're on work experience. Someone's at the end of the phone, so if there's any issues at all, any confusions or anything, always pick up the phone and speak to either us or your school. And then after the placement, we do ask that you can all complete an online survey for us. So this is totally anonymous, but it just helps us reflect for the future. It gives us feedback on your experience in general, on particular employer. So, you know, we know for future how the work experience programme has gone. Any feedback that you want to give is really, really valuable. And like I say, it's anonymous. You don't have your name on it. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so the next couple of slides now, we've just got some comments. So these are real life comments. I won't read through them all for you. You can all read those, but it's just really good to sort of get some feedback of real students that have been out. So I think generally feedback is students generally do really enjoy work experience, but I think sometimes they do tend to find it a little bit tiring, because it is, you know, it is longer hours than school. It is, you know, you're learning new things all the time. It is quite exciting. So I think, you know, generally students are coming home at the end of the day quite tired. So that's good. But I think generally they do find it really, you know, helpful and inspiring, and, you know, do get a lot from it. So again, going back to what Julie was saying earlier, it is a really, really amazing experience to have. Next slide, please. So yeah, this is we've had some real life comments from employers as well. So I mean, these are lovely, lovely comments to be hearing back from employers. We often do get some really good feedback, which is lovely to hear. So generally, it's all about, you know, the attitude of the student and how the student comes across are the key things that employers sort of pick up on. I think a positive attitude, you know, goes so far in any career, in any job. So yeah, those are some comments that we got back from students in the past. Next slide, please. Okay, so finally, we've got a bit of an ask now. So obviously we're always looking for new companies to take on work experience students. So if anyone's sitting here today thinking, oh, actually that's something that, you know, the company I work for might be interested in supporting, it would be amazing if you could contact us and let us know. You can go via the school on the email address listed on the slide in the first instance, and then they'll pass that on to us. It doesn't have to be obviously for this week of work experience that we're talking about. If you could offer work experience at any other time during the year, you know, we've got a number of different schools and projects going on throughout the year. Equally, if you have any questions about your work experience that we've not covered today that you'd like, or anything you'd like any sort of further clarification on, again, email at that address on the link and somebody will come back to you with the information you require. Okay, so thank you very much for listening. I'm going to hand back over to Mr. Collet, I believe now, who's going to wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia and Kate, for the very thorough presentation. Now, in terms of support, I'm going to hand over to our career leader, Mrs. Desai, who wants to say a few words.
Good evening, everybody. I don't want to keep you much longer, but I just want to say thank you to Julia and Kate for all of the information. We do appreciate it is a lot of information to take in one go, and that's what I'm here for. So if students have any questions at all or any worries or queries starting from tomorrow about their work experience process and placements, you can find me in the library Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Friday during morning break and lunchtime, or you can email me at the careers email address on the screen and I'll book a time in for you to come and see me. Parents and carers and guardians, if you have any questions at all, please do email me. If you just put the subject heading as work experience and leave a contact phone number, I can get back to you as soon as possible, because there are always questions and there are no questions that are silly. We'd much rather be able to support you and your student through the whole process, because you're not in this by yourselves. We will be with you every step of the way, whether it's completing the white form or the pink form, which you will be getting students on Friday in your tutor time in the morning. If you've got any questions about the forms or if anything doesn't make sense, please do just drop in and see me on Friday morning break or lunchtime, students, or parents, drop me an email and I will get back to you as soon as I can. I'm just going to pass back now to Mr. Collet to close the meeting.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mrs. Desai. Please do check the parent digest that we sent to you on Wednesday. We will keep you updated and send some reminders of what needs to be done and when for. And that's it, really. So the recording will be available by the end of the week if you need to double check something. Thank you very much for attending remotely tonight and have a great evening. Bye.